All right, now that we have our input being processed by our switch statement here, we can move on to putting this inside of a function. Now, what is a function exactly? A function is essentially a coding structure that allows us to reuse a particular piece of code given some data. So, what does that look like? Well, a function starts with the keyword function, and then we can give it a name like process input. We start a set of parentheses, and in our case here for process input, we're going to leave these empty. And then we open a set of braces, and inside of the set of braces, we're going to perform the function task, whatever that is. In our case, for process input, we want basically this entire switch statement right here, because this is what we're going to want to be able to run over and over again in a loop later so that the game can continue going instead of just ending after a single command is entered. So let's go ahead and cut this right here and paste it in here. And now this process input function can be called whenever we want. So let's go ahead and add a call to the function right here. To call a function or to run the contents of a function, we simply type the name of the function and a set of parentheses. Now, when we run our program, it should function exactly the same. Give our character a new name of nuggets, give them our stats, and then we go to the north, and as you can see, we're still too scared of the dragon. It is still running just like before. Now you might be wondering then, what exactly are these parentheses for? Well, that is where we can pass in data to use within the body of our function. Now if we take a look down here, we're generating a random number between 0 and 5 to add as our random stat boost to attack and defense. However, we probably want to be able to reuse that logic elsewhere. Well, to do that, we can write another function. We can call it generate random int, and here's where the parentheses come in. We can define a minimum and a maximum value that we want for our function, and then open a set of braces to start the function body. Now, these are essentially going to hold the values that we pass in when we call the function later that we could then use within the function body, as we are going to see right now. Now, to generate a random integer, we are going to want to do essentially this, but I'm going to modify it slightly so that it accounts for a minimum and maximum. Don't worry about the complexity of the math, just focus on the fact that we are using what we put in here in the function body. Now we are going to return the result of math.floor, and as our first argument to math.floor, we're going to put math.random times open a new set of parentheses, max minus the min, all plus the min. So this will give us a random integer between the minimum and the maximum. So in order to use the value that we pass in here when we call this function later, we simply put in the name of the parameter, and the value that we pass in will take its place here. So what does that function call look like? Well, let's get rid of these. And we're going to type the name of the function as before, open a set of parentheses, and now we pass in our minimum value, which we're going to say is 0, and our maximum value of 5. Note that down here, these are called parameters when we're defining them and we're giving them names. And up here, when we're passing values into them, these values are referred to as arguments. The argument values take the place of the parameters in the function body. We're going to go ahead and copy and paste that here. So now, before, with our process input function, when we called it, it simply ran through the contents of the function body. And that's all it did. However, here, we're actually getting a value back out of the function because we used this keyword return down here. Whatever value follows a return statement is going to be essentially inserted into the place of the call once this line is reached. So for our example here, we're passing in 0 and 5. So we plug this in, 0 and 5, math.floor, math.random times 5 minus 0 is 5 times the random. It's going to give us a random number. And then we're going to floor that random number. And then we're going to add 0. And we can use this as many times as we want.